Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I'm the CEO of Aegis Biz Tech in Tallahassee, Florida. Cyber tip for today. It's Christmas. It's holiday season. Hackers are taking advantage of it. Look out for fake Evite invitations. Don't do personal email at your office. Stay safe. If you have questions, consult your IT professional or me. That's what we're here for. Thanks for listening to your PSA today. It is my pleasure to welcome Loranne Ausley, former elected official and candidate for Tallahassee Mayor, to the Biz and Tech studio.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, thank you for coming. And a shout out to Josh, our producer, and Charles Lorch, studio, Charlie Bravo Productions. We are off to the races. So let's chat. You're running for Mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How's that process going? What does it look like on a daily basis? And we can just do an intro now. We'll talk in depth about this process later, but just what's it like?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in public service, and it's really important to me. I've grown up in Tallahassee pretty much my whole life, other than going to college away, and I've seen this community grow, and I've been able to serve as a state legislator and a state senator for 14 years. And I think I'm excited about the opportunity to serve, to run and hopefully serve as mayor of my hometown. Awesome.
So let's talk about that, your journey in politics specifically. You mentioned a couple of the roles. Where did it all start? Was that something in high school where one day the light bulb went off and you said, I want to do this for a living? Or was it college? Or was it afterwards when your career started?
So
walk us through your journey.
So I went to college in Virginia, and I worked for Bob Graham when he was the governor of Florida, and he was running for the first time for the United States Senate in 1986.
Okay.
And that was 1 year after graduating from college. And so I worked with him, and we were able to win that election. It was a pretty big deal. And I moved with the Graham administration to Washington and served as a legislative correspondent, answering mail. It was really important. Answered mail. And,
right.
But I had
where was your office in the Capitol?
It was in the Rayburn Building.
Okay.
In Washington. So
I was just up there, so it's top of mind.
Yeah. So it wasn't in the Rayburn Building. It was in the Hart Building. I worked for Don Fuqua, but when I was in college in the Rayburn Building. But Senator Graham's office was in the Hart Building,
okay.
Which was the newer building back then. It's not newer now.
Right.
But it was, I was answering mail. It was really important. But it gave me insight into what's important to Floridians. And then I went to law school and ended up back in Tallahassee working for Buddy McKay as his chief of staff when he was the lieutenant governor to Governor Childs. And Marjorie Turnbull decided not to run for re-election in 2000.
Okay.
And that was the year that all of the term limits went into effect. So anyway, ran for office. It was a 5-way primary. Many people you all know, and good friends of mine, Karen Woodall, Tony Carvajal, Todd Patterson, Doug Crowley, and myself were all in that primary. Mm-hmm. The runoff was me and Todd Patterson, who 3 years later saved my baby's life. Crazy. And then I had a general with Manny Joannis. So 25 years ago, it was 3 elections. And then I was in this huge class of 63 freshmen House members of a total class of 120. 63 of us were brand new to the process. And we're having our 25th anniversary next month or in February. And back then we were friends before we were party members. Mm-hmm. And we're really looking forward to getting back together. So that was my first, I would never thought that I was going to run for office. I always thought I would work for candidates. But when Marjorie decided not to seek re-election, it came open, and I had a few people say, I tried to talk people into it, and I had a few people say, why don't you think about it? Mm-hmm. And I think, and I said, well, maybe I will. And I did, and here we are.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
To hear the stories behind what we know, that's what the show is all about. So you mentioned putting friendship before party. I think that's a message a lot of people can relate to, and a lot of people say but you put it in writing recently when you wrote about Bill Cotterall, rest in peace, a wonderful asset to our media and our state and our region. I've always enjoyed his writings very much, and you can tell. And he doesn't have to say the message that so many people do put in writing. We might not agree politically, but I think he or she is great. He never said that, really. He would just say, here's the story.
Right.
Draw your own conclusions. But you wrote about him and your relationship. Would you mind sharing a little bit of that?
Yeah, I mean, the Democrat, was reporting on his death, and they said anybody that has stories, we'd love to hear them. So I really just wrote in I didn't mean for it to be an article. I just wrote in a little thing.
How cool is
about,
that?
And because I remember this so clearly when I was elected first in 2000, and then our son Will was born in 2003. So had just gotten reelected to the second term. I thought he was going to be born in June of 2003 when he was due, and that was going to make it through the third session. Everything was going to be great. Well, Will Holloman was born in January, not June. He was over 4 months early. Todd Patterson, who we had run against each other in the previous election. Todd saved his life, and he was at the time the youngest premature infant to make it. He was born at 22 weeks, 1 pound, 3.7 ounces. So I was in the legislature, and the beginning of session was in March. So let's think about this. He was born in January. We're in March now. He's still in the hospital, still in the NICU. And I had to go to session because that was my job.
Right.
So I was going back and forth between the legislature, the hospital, and the first day of session always is the opening day, and the governor of Florida always comes and gives a State of the State speech to the House and the Senate that all assemble in the House chamber. And my seat was not near the front, it was near the back because I'm a Democrat in a Republican administration or a Republican legislature. And Jeb Bush, as the governor, came into the chamber, as he typically does on this day, the first day of session, and usually walks down the center aisle, and at pomp and circumstance, everybody, tries to get up there to shake his hand.
Right.
Well, he, instead of going down the center aisle, walked straight over to my desk in the back corner of the House chamber to tell me that he and his wife Columba were praying for us and Will at that time. That meant so much to me that when Bill Cotterall came up to me after the governor's speech and asked for my criticism, which I typically gave of the governor.
Right.
I told him I was not prepared I didn't want to give criticism that day because Jeb and his wife were praying for my son, and I didn't think it was the right thing to do. And Bill Cotterall never forgot that. For every year from that moment, he would bring it up after the State of the State, when it wasn't Jeb Bush anymore, it was Rick Scott and other governors. He would say, I remember, he wouldn't give me criticism before. So anyway, it was a real story about Bill Cotterall because he was human, and that was more important to him than the politics and all the things that we do. And I think we should get back to that.
I agree. From Governor Bush and for yourself and for Bill, for everybody involved. I mean, that's a nice human moment. And a lot of the media experts forget the human element of our elected officials and what you're going through and what, and people should be judged for their actions and not because of their professions. And Bill did a great job of explaining that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And to that end, human story, you've had a hell of a couple of years. I don't want to misrepresent the story because I know some of it, but what have you gone through recently, and what would you like to share with us?
Well, so I think most people know I've a late in life athlete. I started running basically when I started in the legislature in around 2000, 25 years ago.
Right.
And I ran my first marathon around that time. And then I started doing triathlons, swimming, biking, and running. And then right in 2000,
That's so awesome. By
thank
the
you,
way.
and I love that sport. And in 2007, I did my first Ironman, which is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, followed by a full marathon, all together. And I did one with Andy Gardner, who was a House member, a Republican House member from Orlando. He and I did it the same year. We trained together. We, again, we were friends before we were party members. And we did the Ironman together in 2007. And I thought that was going to be it. I picked it back up after Will was grown, and I did 5 additional Ironmans. So the sixth one was the national championship, the world championship for women in Nice, France, last September. And I completed that. It was really hard, like you're swimming in the Mediterranean and then you're riding bikes in the big mountains, and it was amazing.
Yeah, what a surreal place to do that.
It was. So I was trained in September of last year. And so I decided, hey, Ironman Florida is in November of the same year. I'm trained. It's really close to home. I'm going to go do Ironman Florida. And I went to do Ironman Florida, and I swam 2.4 miles, and I apparently had a bike wreck on mile 30, and it was a pretty serious bike accident. I ended up in the hospital in Panama City for about 3 weeks. They transferred me from Panama City to Atlanta, to the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, and I recovered and had a lot of therapy and a lot of people praying for me, and I am happy to say that I'm here today. I'm back running, but it's been an amazing year. 1 year from November 2nd. This year, November 2nd, my husband and I went back to the hospital to say thank you to the surgeons and the trauma team that took care of me. I don't remember being in that hospital at all.
For the 3 weeks?
Yeah.
None?
3 weeks. I don't remember the transfer from Panama City to Atlanta. So I kind of just came to in Atlanta. And so this happens to, this is not, it's an amazing story, but I'm very, very blessed and lucky. I have an incredible husband who didn't leave my bedside. A lot of people here in Tallahassee who followed what was happening, and I made it home in the end of, middle to end of January, and lots of therapy and lots of TMH rehab, and I'm here sitting with you running for mayor.
Well, what a journey. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank
and
you.
You had a community rooting for you, whether it was your Facebook page, which I believe your husband was updating,
Right.
The Tallahassee Democrat. There was a lot of rallying, a lot of support, a lot of prayers, and so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Not just as our guest, but to potentially lead our community going forward. Well, let's talk about literature. We were talking about Word of South, and I know you were really excited to see a copy of my book, Professionally Distanced,
I am.
as part of your gift package
I love
for
it.
today. We don't want to leave anyone empty-handed. But we were talking about Word of South, a wonderful local festival, which if you haven't heard, Earth, Wind, and Fire will be the headliner. Get your tickets now. Word of South. I was so honored to be the opener of the opener of the opener in this year's festival.
amazing.
But hey, I'm on the bill. I was
that's a
on the
big deal.
poster.
That's a big deal.
Me and Charlie Mars, singer-songwriter from Mississippi. But you brought a book today for show and tell. What's that all about?
Well, on your list, you asked me to tell you my favorite book I've ever read, and it's funny because my answer to that has been for years, To Kill a Mockingbird, because I named my dog Atticus,
That's cool.
I tried to bring, because I actually found a copy that was my grandmother's copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, I haven't read it in years, and I was going to look at it. And anyway, it was a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird that my grandmother, somebody had given to her, and it ended up in my bookshelf. So that was cool. But the second thing is,
Very cool.
Jay Revel, good friend Jay Revel, told me about this book called The Other Florida.
Okay.
And I had forgotten. He told me about it, and he said, you should read it because it's kind of about Florida, how it was, and there's a lot of it that's still true. And so to be fair, I haven't read it yet, but I did bring the copy because I think it's not even in print anymore. But this is it. It's called The
Okay.
Other Florida. It's Gloria Jehoda, who
Okay.
it's a true story. She and her husband moved here from New York. He was at FSU, and there's just some great descriptions of Tallahassee it's really interesting. So we'll see. I'll have to come back and tell you how it ends.
Well,
But,
Jay's a walking almanac of
Yeah.
our region.
Yeah.
And fun fact, he was the creative drive behind my book project. We had coffee in 2020, and he threw out the idea, you should put a book together. And after laughing for a minute, I said, yeah, let's do it. And we did. And 5 years later, we're still talking about it sometimes. So that's nice. So let's shift gears. If you could travel in time, any region, any place, where would you go?
So this, that question is a tough question.
It's the toughest podcast question there is.
But here's my answer to this. You just heard about my accident. If I could travel back in time, I would probably travel back to the morning of, or maybe before November 2nd, and decide I really didn't need to do that Ironman, because my life would be very different.
Here.
Yeah. And actually, I think the positives of the accident outweigh the negatives, but I might be able to still ride my bike and do things that I'm not able to do now. And I think if that would be my time traveling experience, potentially.
That's a brilliant answer. And that's probably the realest answer. In 5 years, people want to go to Woodstock or the Renaissance or something like that. How about a life-changing moment?
Right.
Awesome. If you could have cocktails with a celebrity, alive or dead, what do you think?
It's funny because Derek Ham asked me if you could have dinner with 3 people, alive or dead, who would that be? And I wasn't prepared. And I'm out of the blue. I said, Barack Obama, Jeb Bush, and Jerry Garcia.
What a trio.
And because I'm a Dead, I used to listen to the Grateful Dead, and I love Jerry Garcia and how much he, loved people. Barack Obama, I was one of the first elected officials in the state of Florida to endorse Barack Obama in 2007. There were 2 of us, me and Tony Hill, and everybody else, and then Jeb Bush. You've heard a little bit about our relationship, which was not great. I mean, he went after state government, and my job was to support state government. But in retrospect, I think he was a great governor. And it's funny, he has reached out to me after the Derek Ham story to try to get together when he's here in January. And I'm looking forward to that because he has done a lot for the state of Florida.
That's awesome. On the Grateful Dead front, we went to the Sphere this year to see the Dead and Company.
Yeah.
And while John Mayer is no Jerry Garcia, Bob Weir and Mickey Hart did an outstanding job with Mr. Mayer carrying that flag.
I'm sure.
And the supporting cast they have, they're elite musicians. And then you throw the Sphere on top of that with the logistics, because, the older you get, shows become a little bit of a hassle,
Right.
Lines and crowds, et cetera. We stayed in the Venetian, walked into the Sphere through an underground passage that they have, right to the seats, first class accommodations and, food, et cetera. And then the sound and lights were like, any description I would give would not do it justice. And I know Zach Brown is playing right now at the Sphere, which I have a friend that works for his organization. So they're sending me pictures of how amazing it is. But what a place. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. You think that the whatever they're called now, the Dead's going to do they're going to go back to the Sphere
I think they're
again?
going to do one more.
Okay. I'm going to make that.
Make it happen.
Yep. I'm gonna make it happen.
Great. 3.5 hour set. It was really fun. So we talked about Jerry. Obviously, I shared my concert of the year. What was your favorite concert? I usually say of your childhood, formative years, but when you were younger, what do you think that first 10 or so shows that really blew your mind?
Well, it's funny because, I'll tell you, I was a Deadhead, but I started out as a, whatever you call them now, but I was a huge Jimmy Buffett fan. And I went
Parrot Head,
yeah,
I think.
Thank you, Parrot Head.
Yes.
My brother's a big Parrot Head.
My buddy Ron LaFace is a huge Jimmy Buffett fan.
And I love Jimmy Buffett, but it's very different than the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And there was a concert when I was in high school with Jimmy Buffett and the Eagles and it was in the swamp in Gainesville. And my parents
on the same bill?
Yeah, they were on the same bill.
That's awesome.
And they told me I couldn't go but guess what? I went anyway, and I got in trouble. But it was a great concert, and it was that's for me that was my first really big concert, and it was cool.
Yeah, how do you get away with that now? With cell phones and monitoring. I mean, where are you? What are you doing?
Right? No, they didn't know.
Because ours was eighth grade, I believe it was, Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue performance, and we didn't exactly sneak there because it was in Albany, Georgia, but we did some finagling. I'm staying at such and such house. Right. You stayed at my house.
I'd never done that.
His sister's babysitting, and she did. Thank you, Leisha Borland. She drove Quinn Borland and I to Albany from Dothan, Alabama. And
so
what a
she
show.
was part of the.
She was part of the problem, not the solution.
Okay.
But it was amazing.
That's
and
awesome.
the Rolling Stones in the Swamp, fast forward many years. The Swamp's a great spot for live music.
Yeah.
And it sounds like FSU is going to be having some live performances at Doak Campbell in the future. So that'll be cool. I mean, stadium shows are incredible. What's your favorite part of Florida? It can be Tallahassee-centric if you want, but what do you love about our state?
It's got to be Tallahassee-centric. I'm so proud.
It does, right?
I'm so proud of Cascades Park. I mean, to me, it really is and I had a little bit to do with that and got some money for the initial cleanup because
when did that B question? How long did that take from first idea to opening? Wasn't it like a 10-year?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but I remember when I ran for office the first time in 2000, I announced my candidacy in what is now Cascade, where the Department of Transportation is, where the Springtime Tallahassee race starts and all or finishes. It was kind of near there. Rhea Childs was with me when I was announcing my candidacy for the House. And the part of my announcement was remembering my grandmother driving me to the coast we would stop at the B&W Fruit Market, which you probably don't remember, but it was right across from, it's kind of where Proof is now, looking at Cascades Park. And she would always say, that is the founding of Tallahassee. There was a beautiful cascade waterfall. And, she would always tell me that. And it was behind, fences, and it was a dump spot and all these things. I mean, it was also a baseball stadium. There's been so much that's happened on that property. And it has turned back into that. Word of South is a perfect example. What a great way to show off our community in so many different ways. And Mark has done an amazing job with Word of South, and I understand you're on the board. It's amazing. So I love it.
It's brought some next level attention to our community. The Violent Femmes with the Symphony.
No, it's great.
This year was amazing. The Flaming Lips the year prior. Ben Folds with the Symphony the year before that. And Earth, Wind, and Fire. I can't think of anyone that wouldn't know who Earth, Wind, and Fire is.
Right.
But big talent with local authors, national authors. Great, concessions. That's part of the experience, of course. But just an amazing festival. And, of course, Sally Bradshaw and the Midtown Reader Crew rolling out. It's a lot of fun. And you're right. Good job, Mark Muschin. He's been on the show before, so he gets a shout-out.
Good.
So before we get out of here today, what are you going to fix? What needs fixing? I was talking to one of our managers on the way over to the studio right before you came in. And I said, Loranne Ausley's going to be here. What would you ask her? She's like, I don't know. What needs fixing? What does need fixing, in your opinion?
Well, I think we need to get to a place where our community is working together towards the things that matter. Housing for people for all levels, transportation that works for everyone in this community, but agreeing on those things. The city and the county together, can we come up with 3 or 5 things that will make a difference for everyone in this community? North of town, south side, east and west. There are issues all around, and I think if we could figure out how to focus on these things together, it could make a big difference.
And before we close, what is a day running for mayor? What does that look like? I know we're early in the process. You got a good stretch of road ahead of you, but what does it look like?
So right now, I'm doing. We're calling it Let's Talk Tallahassee, and I'm listening to as many people as I can. I think it's really important to be talking to young people. I have a 22-year-old son. You heard about his very interesting entry into this world. He's a drummer in about 10 bands here.
I was going to ask what he's up to these days.
He's going to TSC, and he's playing a lot of music.
Rock and roll or other?
It's kind of heavier than rock and roll.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Okay. Heavy metal's good.
Yeah,
we like that.
It's interesting. And but anyway, I think talking to 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings, 50-somethings, everyone has different ideas about how to move this community forward and what is needed. And I think listening to all of that and figuring it out, that's what I'm looking forward to doing in the next 8 to 10 months, trying to figure this out.
Okay. And how can people learn more about your campaign? Are you on all the social platforms?
I'm on the
website?
social platforms, ausleyformayor.com.
Okay.
And I also have on there's a QR code, I think, and if not, we'll put it out there on social media for the Let's Talk Tallahassee. I'd love to hear people's ideas about how long they've lived here, what are great things about Tallahassee, what are things we might want to change about Tallahassee. I'd love to hear from anyone.
Absolutely. Any closing thoughts today?
No, thank you so much. This is great.
Oh, my pleasure. It was nice to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing so much of your life and your journey. And again, thank you for your service. And for everyone listening today, happy holidays, happy New Year, Merry Christmas, happy Hanukkah. We'll cover some of the bases there. Whatever you celebrate and whomever you celebrate with, I hope it's awesome. And please don't respond to texts about tolls that you haven't paid. Don't respond to emails for Christmas parties you don't know anything about. And look out for caller IDs. Just because it says Leon County Sheriff's Department on the caller ID doesn't necessarily mean it is. I'm not saying disregard law enforcement. PSA to the PSA, but be due diligent. Don't give money to people that you don't owe money to. How about that? Common sense, cybersecurity, that's your tips for today. I'm Blake Dowling. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our production team, Charles, Josh, great work. Thank you, Tallahassee. Thank you, Florida. Thank you, the United States of America. We appreciate you. Happy New Year. We'll see you next time. I'm Blake Dowling, CEO, Aegis BizTech, signing off. Have a nice day. Thanks for listening.